Alan Carter nervously straightened his uniform as the transport shuttle docked with the massive space station. Through the viewport, he could see the gleaming structure of Harmonious Unity, home of the Galactic Council. Beside him, Ambassador Diane Powell took a deep breath. "This is it," she said quietly. "Humanity's big moment." Alan nodded. After centuries of wondering if we were alone in the universe, decades of sending signals into space, and years of preparing for this meeting, humanity was finally about to join the galactic community. The shuttle doors opened with a soft hiss. A tall, blue-skinned alien with 4 arms waited for them. Its face had no mouth, but a series of lights on its chest pulsed as it spoke. The words translated through the devices Alan and Diane wore in their ears. "Welcome to Harmonious Unity. I am Protocol Officer Xenar. The Council awaits you." They followed Xenar through wide corridors filled with dozens of alien species. Some looked almost human, while others defied description. Clouds of gas contained, in floating shells, crystalline beings that clicked and chimed as they moved, and creatures that seemed made of pure light. "There are over 500 species in the Galactic Council," Xenar explained as they walked. "Each has proven their civilization worthy of joining our community." Alan and Diane exchanged excited glances. Earth's governments had united like never before when the aliens made first contact. Old enemies became partners, pooling resources and knowledge to prepare for this day. The United Earth delegation had spent years learning about galactic protocols and customs. They entered an enormous chamber. Circular platforms rose in tiers, each holding representatives from different worlds. At the center, on the highest platform, sat 7 beings that Alan recognized as the High Council, the most respected leaders of the oldest spacefaring races. "The human representatives from planet Earth," Xenar announced, the translation echoing through the chamber. Diane stepped forward, first as they had rehearsed. "Honorable members of the Galactic Council, we come in peace and friendship, hoping to join your community of worlds. Earth offers its culture, its art, its sciences, and the unique perspective of humanity to enrich the galactic tapestry." For several long moments, silence filled the chamber. Then a tall, gray-skinned alien with eyes that glowed faintly purple stood up. This was High Counselor Vex Orion of the Zethari, one of the founding species of the Council. "We have studied your world for many cycles," Vex Orion said, his voice deep and smooth in the translation. "We have watched your television broadcasts, intercepted your internet communications, observed your interactions with your planet and with each other." Alan felt a chill run down his spine. The way Vex Orion spoke didn't sound like the beginning of a welcome speech. "Humanity has spent most of its history at war with itself," Vex Orion continued. "You have damaged your environment, driven countless species to extinction, and developed weapons capable of destroying your entire civilization. Your technological progress is concerning in its speed and direction." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Alan saw many alien delegates nodding in agreement. Diane stepped forward again. "With respect, High Counselor, we acknowledge our troubled past, but we have learned from our mistakes. In the last 50 years alone, we have made great strides in healing our planet, creating more just societies and turning our technology toward peaceful purposes." Another council member, a being that looked like a collection of floating tentacles surrounding a central eye, moved forward. "Your species went from simple flight to nuclear weapons in less than 50 years, from basic computing to artificial intelligence in less than 100. Such rapid development is unprecedented and, frankly, dangerous. But that innovation could benefit everyone," Alan said, speaking up despite the protocol that Diane should do the talking. "Our adaptability, our creativity, these are gifts we bring to the galactic community." Vex Orion's glowing eyes narrowed. "That is precisely what concerns us. Your species adapts too quickly, changes too readily, and shows a disturbing tendency toward aggression when threatened." A vote was called. One by one, representatives from hundreds of worlds registered their decisions on glowing panels before them. Alan watched with growing horror as the results appeared on a large floating display. almost unanimous against Earth. The Council has decided, Vexorian announced. Humanity is denied membership in the Galactic Council. Furthermore, for the safety of the galactic community, Earth and its solar system will be placed under quarantine. No human vessels will be permitted to travel beyond your solar system. No trade, no cultural exchange, no technological sharing will be permitted. You're exiling us? Diane asked, her voice shaking with disbelief. We are protecting the galaxy, while giving your species time to mature, another council member said. In a few thousand years, perhaps, you may be reconsidered. You can't do this, Alan shouted, abandoning all diplomatic pretense. You can't just lock us away. The decision is final, Vexorian said coldly. You will be returned to Earth, barrier. Technology will be deployed at the edges of your solar system. Any attempt to breach this barrier will be met with force. Within hours, Alan and Diane found themselves back on their shuttle, heading home with the devastating news. Before they even reached Earth, alien ships were already deploying at the edges of the solar system, setting up the technology that would become humanity's prison walls. When they landed, reporters and government officials swarmed them. President Sofia Martinez, who had pinned such hopes on this meeting, looked 10 years older as she received their report. That evening, she addressed a stunned planet. Today, humanity faced its greatest disappointment. The stars we have dreamed of reaching have been denied to us by those who already walk among them. The Galactic Council has judged us unworthy and unsafe. Riots broke out in some cities. Religious groups declared it divine punishment. Stock markets crashed as companies that had invested in future space trade saw their prospects vanish overnight. But a week later, President Martinez spoke again to a more somber world. They have underestimated us, she said simply. If they won't, let us join them. We'll build something better right here. Our solar system is vast and rich with resources. Mars, Venus, the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. These will be our new frontiers. Let the aliens watch from beyond their barrier as we create a civilization that will one day make them regret their choice. Her words sparked something in the human spirit. Within months, the newly formed Solar Coalition began an unprecedented push into space. Colony ships already bound for Mars received new funding and resources. Mining operations in the asteroid belt expanded. Research into sustainable living in space accelerated. Alan Carter, no longer a diplomat with no one to talk to, found himself appointed Director of Solar Expansion. Standing at the window of the lunar observation post 6 months after their return, from harmonious unity, he watched as the largest colony ship ever built rose slowly from Earth, bound for the Jovian moons. They thought they were punishing us, he said to Diane, who now headed the new Department of Alien Understanding. But they just gave humanity the push it needed. Do you think they're watching us? She asked. I'm counting on it, Alan replied, and I hope they're taking notes, because we're just getting started. Beyond the orbit of Pluto, the alien barrier glimmered faintly, invisible to human eyes but ever present in human consciousness, a wall meant to contain them, which would, instead, become the foundation upon which humanity would build its future among the stars. 20 years passed since the day humanity was exiled to the solar system. What had begun as a bitter disappointment transformed into humanity's greatest period of growth and innovation. They called it the Solar Renaissance. Dr. Gregory Watson stared out the viewport of his laboratory orbiting Jupiter. The gas giant's swirling storms provided a magnificent backdrop for his work. At 52, his hair had gone gray, but his eyes still held the same excitement they had when he was a young physicist on Earth. Dr. Watson, the latest test results are ready, said his assistant, Mia Johnson, a brilliant young scientist born on the Mars colony. Gregory turned from the window. The laboratory hummed with activity as researchers from across the solar system worked on what many considered impossible, finding a way through the alien barrier. Let's see what we've got, he said, moving to the central holographic display. The test data showed something new, a slight fluctuation in the energy pattern when they directed their experimental drive toward the barrier. It wasn't much, but it was the first real reaction they'd seen in years of testing. It's responding, Mia whispered. The barrier actually responded to the drive. Gregory nodded slowly. It's not just a wall, it's a membrane, and membranes can be penetrated. The Watson Drive, as people had started calling it, wasn't developed to challenge the barrier at first. It began as a solution to the problem of efficient travel within the solar system. Without access to alien technology, humans needed to find their own way to move between the increasingly distant colonies. Gregory's team discovered principles of space-time manipulation that allowed ships to create a bubble of compressed space, effectively shortening the distance they needed to travel. A journey to Jupiter that once took months now required only days. Across the solar system, humanity had spread out and flourished. Mars now held 3 major cities beneath vast, transparent domes. The clouds of Venus hosted floating research platforms. The moons of Jupiter and Saturn supported mining operations and scientific outposts. Even distant Pluto had a small but growing settlement. On Earth, Dr. Olivia Ramirez walked through the campus of the New Geneva University, where she taught and developed governance models. At 46, she had become one of the most influential thinkers of the solar renaissance. Professor Ramirez called one of her students, running to catch up with her. "Have you heard the news from Mars?" Olivia smiled. "About the water crisis in Olympus City?" "Yes, I've been following it closely." "The adaptive consensus resolved it this morning," the student said excitedly. "The belt colonies agreed to divert water shipments, and the lunar manufacturing hubs are sending new recycling systems." Olivia felt a surge of pride. The adaptive consensus system she had developed was working. Unlike Earth's old political systems, based on geographic boundaries and winner-takes-all elections, the adaptive consensus built decisions from the bottom up. Communities identified their needs and resources, then worked together to find solutions that benefited everyone involved. In the past, such a resource conflict might have led to tension or even violence. Now, it was resolved through cooperation. Not because aliens forced them to behave, but because humans had found a better way on their own. "This is exactly what the system was designed for," she said. "Now let's get to class. Today we're discussing how to further improve it." In his office, on the Lunar Administrative Center, Alan Carter, now director of the Solar Coalition, reviewed reports from across human space. His hair had gone completely white and lines creased his face, but his determination had only grown stronger over the years. A call came through on his secure channel. It was Diane Powell, who now headed the Alien Monitoring Division. "Alan, we've detected unusual activity at the barrier," she said without preamble. 3 alien ships passed through. They're observing our settlements on Titan." Alan frowned. The Council occasionally sent observers through the barrier, but 3 ships at once was unusual. "Have they made contact?" "No," Diane replied. "Just watching as usual. But there's something else. One of our mining ships in the Kuiper Belt found something interesting. A damaged alien vessel, drifting just inside the barrier." Alan sat up, straighter. "Is it from the Council?" "It appears to be, a small scout ship. And Alan, there's a survivor on board." The news spread quickly through secure channels. The damaged scout ship was towed to a secure facility in the outer solar system. Inside was a wounded alien, an Elshiri, one of the Council's minor species. The medical team, led by Chief Medical Officer Natalie Reeves, worked tirelessly to save the alien's life. Despite having limited knowledge of Elshiri biology, "Its vital signs are stabilizing," Natalie reported after 3 days of intensive care. "I think it's going to make it." The alien recovery became a test of humanity's evolution. 20 years ago, many would have demanded the alien be used to extract technology or information. Now a different approach prevailed. When the Elshiri regained consciousness, it was treated with dignity and care. Through a basic translation system developed from old Council communications, Natalie explained what had happened. "Your ship was damaged. We found you and brought you here for medical treatment. When you're well enough, we will help you return to your people." The Elshiri seemed confused by this kindness. It had clearly expected hostility from the exiled humans. In a meeting of the Solar Coalition leadership, the question of what to do next sparked intense debate. "This is our chance to send a message," Alan said firmly. "We'll repair their ship, as best we can, and escort them to the edge of the barrier. Let the Council see that we're not the savages they think we are." Zachary Kim, head of the Solar Defense Force, disagreed. "This is our first chance to study their technology up close. We could learn how to break through the barrier." The debate continued until Kelly Nguyen, representative from the Titan colonies, spoke up. "If we exploit this situation, we prove the Council right about us. Our strength isn't in copying their technology. It's in developing our own path. Let's show them who we've become." A vote was called using the adaptive consensus system. The decision was clear. The El Shiri would be helped home. 2 weeks later, a human ship approached the barrier with the repaired alien scout in tow. Using the translation system, they transmitted a message to the Council ships waiting on the other side. "We return your pilot in peace. We still wish to join you as equals, not as subjects." The Council ships retrieved the scout without reply. Within days, the barrier was strengthened, and warnings about increased human aggression were broadcast across the solar system. "They're afraid," Gregory Watson said when he heard the news. "Not of our weapons, but of our progress." He returned to his laboratory with renewed purpose. The Watson drive was getting closer to a breakthrough, and when it came, humanity would no longer ask for permission to join the stars. They would simply go. 50 years had passed since humanity's exile, and the solar system had transformed beyond recognition. Massive stations orbited every planet. Mars was now home to 15 million people. The moons of Jupiter and Saturn hosted thriving colonies. Even the distant Kuiper Belt was dotted with mining operations and research outposts. Zachary Kim, now an older man with white hair and weathered skin, stood on the observation deck of Kuiper Station Alpha. As chief engineer of the outer system, defenses, he had spent decades studying the alien barrier that kept humanity trapped in their solar system. "There it is again," he said, pointing to the readout on his tablet. Another fluctuation in the barrier. His assistant, a young woman, named Ellen Wright, who had been born on Europa, studied the data. "It's the third one this month. The barrier is becoming unstable." This was what they had been waiting for. After years of monitoring and careful probing, the first real weakness in their prison walls had appeared. Zachary immediately sent a secure message to Solar Coalition headquarters on Luna. Within hours, an emergency meeting was called with leaders from across human space. Admiral Benjamin Franklin, commander of the newly established Solar Defense Fleet, stood before the gathered representatives. At 45, he had spent his entire career preparing for the day humanity might face the aliens again. "The barrier is showing signs of instability," he explained. "Our scientists believe there are now points where a properly equipped ship could break through." President Sofia Martinez, granddaughter of the president who had led humanity after the initial exile, leaned forward in her chair. "Can we be certain it's not a trap? The Council might be testing us." "We've been monitoring their surveillance drones for years," Zachary replied. "We've captured several and learned much about their technology. This fluctuation pattern doesn't match their usual activities." Dr. Gregory Watson, now in his 80s but still sharp-minded, spoke up from his seat. "The latest version of the Watson drive could take advantage of these weaknesses. We've been running simulations for months. A specially designed ship could breach the barrier with minimal damage." The room filled with excited murmurs. For 50 years, humanity had been building, planning, and preparing for this moment. Now it was finally within reach. "What exactly are you proposing, Admiral?" asked President Martinez. Admiral Franklin straightened his uniform. "Operation Breakout. We send a small, fast ship through the barrier at one of these weak points. The mission would be primarily exploratory. Find out what's beyond our solar system, make contact with other species if possible, and return with information." "And if they try to stop us?" asked one of the Mars representatives. "The ship would be armed for defense only," the Admiral replied. "This isn't about starting a war. It's about asserting our right to freedom." The debate lasted for hours. Some argued it was too risky, that the Council might respond with devastating force. Others believed humanity had a right, perhaps even a duty, to break free of their confinement. The final vote fell to Kelly Nguyen, now an elderly stateswoman who represented the outer colonies. Her family had fled Vietnam as refugees centuries ago before settling on Titan. She understood what it meant to be forced from one's home, to be treated as unwelcome. Throughout human history, she said slowly, there have been those who built walls to keep others out, or in. And there have always been those who believed in breaking down those walls not through violence, but through the simple assertion that all people deserve freedom of movement and the chance to build a better life. She paused, looking around the room. There is a difference between aggressive expansion and the right to explore. We aren't seeking to conquer. We seek only the same rights as every other species in the galaxy. To travel among the stars, to learn, to grow. I vote yes to Operation Breakout. The motion passed. Construction of the special ship began immediately in the shipyards orbiting Jupiter. The ship was named Horizon, a sleek vessel equipped with the most advanced version of the Watson drive. Its captain would be Daniel Rivera, a veteran explorer, who had led expeditions to the farthest reaches of the solar system. On the day of launch, crowds gathered at view screens across human space to watch. The Horizon's crew of 20 represented the best of humanity, scientists, explorers, and diplomats ready to be the first humans to venture beyond the solar system in 50 years. Captain Rivera stood on the bridge, looking at his crew. No matter what happens today, we're making history. If we succeed, we open the door for all humanity to follow. Lisa Sullivan, the ship's diplomatic officer, smiled nervously. And if we fail? Then others will try again, Rivera replied confidently. Humanity doesn't give up easily. The Horizon launched from Jupiter orbit, accelerating toward the barrier. Dr. Watson and his team had identified a point in the barrier where the fluctuations were strongest, a potential doorway to the greater galaxy. As they approached the barrier, tension on the bridge grew. Sensors showed the invisible wall of energy that had contained humanity for half a century. Activating Watson drive in 3, 2, 1, called out the pilot. The ship shuddered as the drive engaged. Space seemed to bend around them, the stars stretching into lines of light. The barrier loomed ahead, a shimmering distortion barely visible to the naked eye. Barrier contact in 5 seconds, the pilot announced. Everyone held their breath. There was a flash of light, a moment of intense pressure, and then stars. Different arrangements of stars than any human had seen before. "We're through," shouted the navigator. Minimal damage to outer hull. All systems operational. Cheers erupted throughout the ship. Captain Rivera immediately sent the confirmation signal back toward Earth. It would take hours to reach home, but the message was simple. The door is open. Lisa Sullivan was the first to notice something on the long-range sensors. "Captain, we're detecting a ship approaching. It's not Council design." The alien vessel was smaller than the Horizon, with an unusual spiral configuration. It made no aggressive moves, simply matching their course and speed. "They're transmitting," Lisa said, surprised. "And it's in a format our computers can translate." The message was simple. "Welcome, humans. We've been waiting for you to break free. Not all of us agree with the Council's decision to exile your species. There are many who would speak with you, trade with you, ally with you." Captain Rivera smiled. "It seems we're not as alone out here as the Council wanted us to believe. Open a channel. Tell them we're very interested in talking." The Horizon had just made the most important discovery in 50 years. Humanity had potential allies among the stars. The alien ship belonged to the Nelvari, a species that had achieved space travel only a few hundred years ago. Like humans, they had been treated as second-class citizens by the older Galactic Council races. Captain Daniel Rivera and his crew were welcomed aboard the Nelvari vessel, where they met Captain Solara, a tall, slender being with iridescent skin that shifted colors with her emotions. Many younger species disagree with how the Council treated humanity, Solara explained as they sat in her ship's meeting room. The older races fear rapid change and innovation. They've been comfortable with their power for thousands of years. Lisa Sullivan, the Horizon's diplomatic officer, carefully recorded everything. Are there many species like yours who feel this way? Solara's skin rippled with blue patterns. Amusement, Lisa guessed. More than the Council knows. The Takasi, the Vreen, the Jardu, all of us younger species share information and technology in secret. We call ourselves the non-aligned worlds. This was more than the Horizon crew had dared hope for. Not only had they broken through the barrier, but they had found potential allies who opposed the Council's treatment of humanity. Why would the Council fear us so much? Rivera asked. We were just beginning our journey to the stars when they confined us. Solara's skin darkened to a deep purple. They have technology that predicts potential futures. Your species showed thousands of possible paths, most ending with humans becoming a major power in the galaxy within just a few centuries. The older species typically take millennia to reach new stages of development. Your speed frightens them. Over the next few days, the Horizon crew shared human history, culture, and technological developments with the Nelvari. In return, Solara provided star charts, information about nearby systems, and introductions to representatives of other non-aligned species. Lisa was particularly interested in learning how the Council truly operated. We were told it was a democratic institution where all species had equal voices. Talara, a Takasi diplomat with 4 arms and feathery antennae, clicked his mandibles in what Lisa had learned was a laugh. The Council claims to be democratic, but the 7 founding species control everything. They have held power for over 20,000 years. The rest of us are expected to be grateful they allow us to travel the stars at all. Lisa understood. Now, they didn't exile us because we were violent. They exiled us because we might eventually challenge their control. Precisely, Talara confirmed. They saw your potential and decided to contain it. As the Horizon continued its exploratory mission, they visited several non-aligned worlds. Each encounter followed a similar pattern. Initial caution, followed by surprise at meeting humans, and then genuine interest in exchange and cooperation. The Watson Drive particularly impressed the non-aligned species. Their own FTL technology was based on designs provided by the Council, deliberately inefficient and limited. The human innovation offered something the Council didn't control. Your governance system is fascinating as well, said Jorax, a leader among the reptilian Vreen. This adaptive consensus could work well for our alliance of independent worlds. Captain Rivera realized they had stumbled upon something much bigger than a simple exploration mission. My people have spent 50 years building something new within our solar system. We've created technologies and social systems that even the Council doesn't have. What if we shared these freely with your peoples? The non-aligned representatives were cautious but intrigued. For centuries, they had lived under the Council's restrictions, given limited access to advanced technology, and kept from developing too quickly. The Council monitors all official communications and trade, Solara warned. If they discover we're working with humans, they might punish our worlds. Lisa had been thinking about this problem. What if we established a hidden meeting point, a place where representatives from all our worlds could gather safely to exchange ideas and technology? The plan quickly took shape. A system at the edge of non-aligned space, far from Council monitoring stations, would serve as their secret rendezvous point. The Horizon would return to Earth with the news and coordinates, while the non-aligned species would prepare representatives to meet there. Before departing back to Earth, Captain Rivera asked the question that had been on everyone's mind. Why? Help us? You're taking a significant risk. Solara's skin shifted to a gentle golden hue. Because we see in humans what we wish to become. Innovators who forge their own path rather than following rules set by ancient powers. The Council keeps us dependent on them, doling out technology and knowledge like parents to children. You've shown there's another way forward. The Horizon's return journey through the barrier was smoother than their outward journey. The crew was jubilant, knowing they carried news that would change humanity's future forever. When they reached Earth, the news spread rapidly throughout human space. The Solar Coalition convened an emergency session to hear Captain Rivera's report. "We are not alone in opposing the Council," Rivera told the gathered representatives. "There are dozens of species who have been similarly restricted and controlled. They call themselves the non-aligned worlds, and they're eager to work with us." Lisa Sullivan presented the detailed information they had gathered. "The Council isn't the benevolent democratic institution it claims to be. It's controlled by 7 ancient species who use their technological advantages to maintain power over younger civilizations. They exiled us not because we were dangerous, but because their predictive models showed we would eventually challenge their dominance. The revelation caused an uproar. For 50 years, humanity had believed they were confined because of their violent tendencies. Learning it was actually their potential that frightened the Council changed everything." Admiral Benjamin Franklin stood to address the coalition. "I propose we establish formal contact with these non-aligned worlds. We can share our technologies, the Watson Drive, our governance systems, our cultural achievements, in exchange for their knowledge of the galaxy." President Martinez nodded thoughtfully. "We spent 50 years believing we were alone, building something better within our solar system. Now we find there are others like us seeking freedom from the Council's control. This isn't just about humanity breaking free anymore. This could be the beginning of a new galactic order." The vote was unanimous. The Solar Coalition would send diplomatic and scientific missions to the rendezvous point. Humanity would emerge from exile not as conquerors, but as partners to other species seeking a more equal and just galaxy. As the meeting concluded, one of the Martian representatives asked the question on everyone's mind. "What happens when the Council discovers what we're doing?" Admiral Franklin's expression was grim but determined. "They will discover it eventually, and they won't be happy. But by then, I hope we'll have built something they can't simply lock away again." In the following weeks, 5 ships were prepared to travel beyond the barrier, carrying scientists, diplomats, and engineers ready to share humanity's innovations with their new allies. The Council's attempt to contain humanity had failed. Instead of preventing human influence, they had created exactly what they feared: a humanity motivated to build something better than the empire that had rejected them. 6 months after the Horizon's historic journey, humanity's alliance with the non-aligned worlds had grown stronger than anyone expected. The secret meeting point, a small planet orbiting a red dwarf star far from Council space, had become a bustling center of exchange. Ships from a dozen species came and went, sharing technology, culture, and ideas free from Council oversight. Commander Heather Blackwood stood on the bridge of the Defiance, the most advanced vessel humanity had ever built. At 42, she had spent her career in the Solar Defense Fleet, preparing for a confrontation she hoped would never come. Now, as she watched the ships of their new allies moving in formation with her own, she felt both pride and concern. "Status. Report," she ordered, her voice calm despite the tension everyone felt. "All ships in position," her second-in-command reported. "Nelvari and Tokasi vessels report ready. Vreen defense platforms are online." It had been inevitable that the Council would discover their alliance. When human ships began appearing at non-aligned worlds, trading goods and sharing technology, Council observers took notice. The final straw came when the Nelvari announced they were adopting the adaptive consensus system and implementing their own version of the Watson Drive. The Council response was swift and predictable. They declared that humans had violated quarantine and were contaminating innocent species with their disruptive ideologies. A fleet of Council warships was dispatched to the Nelvari homeworld with orders to eliminate the human presence and punish their allies. What the Council didn't expect was the unified defense force waiting for them. When their fleet arrived, they found not just a few human ships but vessels from a dozen non-aligned species standing together. The Council fleet commander's transmission came through with obvious surprise. "This is High Commander Vorlex of the EB, Galactic Council Enforcement Division. The Nelvari are harboring quarantined humans in violation of Council law. Stand down and surrender the human vessels immediately." Commander Blackwood stepped forward. This is Commander Heather Blackwood, of the human vessel Defiance. The Nelvari are our allies, as are all the ships you see before you. We don't want war. We never did. But we will not be caged again, nor will we abandon our friends. There was a long pause before the Council Commander responded. Your species was judged too dangerous to join galactic society. This alliance you've formed proves the Council was correct. Does it? Blackwood countered. Look around you, Commander. We haven't conquered anyone. We haven't forced our ways on anyone. We've shared our knowledge freely, traded fairly, and formed friendships. Is that what you find so threatening? The standoff lasted for hours. The Council fleet had superior firepower, but they were outnumbered by the combined, non-aligned, and human ships. Finally, without firing a shot, the Council vessels withdrew. They'll be back, said Solara, who now served as the Nelvari representative to what they had begun calling the Stellar Concordat. And with a larger fleet. Then we'd better make the most of this time, Blackwood replied. News of the confrontation spread rapidly through Council space. Many species that had loyally followed Council leadership for centuries began to question why such force was being organized against what appeared to be a peaceful alliance. Some of the mid-tier Council species sent observers to Concordat worlds, curious about the human innovations that had so alarmed their leaders. What they found surprised them. The Watson drive was being freely shared with any species that wanted it. The adaptive consensus was helping worlds with diverse populations govern themselves more effectively. Human cultural works, music, art, literature, were being exchanged with the cultures of dozens of other species, creating new and beautiful forms. 3 months after the standoff, representatives from 5 mid-tier Council worlds secretly contacted the Concordat, expressing interest in joining. The alliance that had begun with humanity and a handful of non-aligned species was growing into something much larger. The Council's response was divided. The 7 ancient species that truly controlled the Council were alarmed by this defection, but many of their subject worlds were beginning to question centuries of obedience. Some Council members openly criticized the decision to exile humanity, arguing that it had created exactly the problem it was meant to prevent. 100 years after humanity's exile, Ambassador Ryan Mitchell stood before the first full assembly of the Stellar Concordat on the newly constructed diplomatic station New Harmony. At 35, he represented a generation of humans who had grown up in a solar system without boundaries, who saw cooperation with alien species as normal and expected. Representatives from over 60 species filled the Great Chamber, including several former Council members. The Concordat now controlled nearly a third of the galaxy, growing through voluntary association rather than conquest or coercion. 100 years ago, Mitchell began, humanity stood before another council and was found wanting. We were judged too aggressive, too innovative, too unpredictable to join galactic society. We were exiled to our solar system, cut off from the stars we had just begun to reach for. He looked around at the diverse assembly. That exile was meant to contain us, to prevent us from influencing the galaxy. Yet here we are, surrounded by friends and allies from across the stars. Mitchell gestured to the elderly Solara, whose skin now shimmered with the silver patterns of Nelvari age. We were exiled because they feared what we might become. In that exile, we became something better than we might have been. Not conquerors, not subjects, but builders of bridges. The assembly erupted in sounds of approval, the chirps, clicks, hums, and applause of dozens of different species. The empire we've helped create isn't one of dominion, but of cooperation. Not of subjects and rulers, but of equals with different gifts to share. This is the legacy of humanity's exile. We built something better than an empire. We built a family. As Mitchell concluded his speech, a message arrived that caused a stir among the delegates. After years of declining influence and the defection of more and more of its member worlds, the remaining Galactic Council had requested formal diplomatic relations with the Concordat. It seems, Mitchell said with a smile, that even the oldest powers in the galaxy can learn new ways. Let us welcome them to the conversation. The experiment had failed. The Council's attempt to contain humanity had instead catalyzed the very transformation they feared, but not in the way they had predicted. Humanity hadn't conquered the galaxy. They had helped remake it into something better, something more just and free than the stagnant empire that had rejected them. As the assembly dispersed to prepare for the historical meeting with council representatives, Mitchell looked out at the stars visible through the station's great viewport. Somewhere out there was Earth, the homeworld that had launched humanity on this unexpected journey. "We made it to the stars," he whispered. "Just not the way anyone expected."